You might have seen a lot of people complaining about cheaters online lately. I know I certainly have. Specifically in PvP games, and just as an example, I have some very loose data here from this random website I found that is basically taking the total player count at a certain period of time and comparing it to the amount of times that cheats were searched effectively. But this is not an accurate metric, and this percentage is not going to be an accurate representation of the likelihood of encountering a cheater, because total players and the actual amount of players in a game per month is a lot different. So I think in practice these numbers would actually be a lot higher, but I just wanted to show this as a quick example. People are talking about cheaters a lot, because it seems like with every new game that gets released that is a PvP online game, the moment it becomes popular, it is, quote, overrun with cheaters. And a good example of this is the Finals, which is a very recent launch. And you can see Reddit post after Reddit post, as well as streamers and YouTubers talking about how that game is full of cheaters at the moment. So it's become a big topic right now, big problem. And in today's video, I kind of want to go over my theory about the whole cheating situation in general, because I want to get the conversation started and take a look at the cheating situation from a perspective that I haven't really seen anyone even think about or talk about. Not because you have to agree with me, but I think it's important to consider the possibility that the reason this is so widespread is perhaps a lot more nuanced than just cheaters bad. And this is going to sound like a hot take, but before you rage in the comments, I suggest you at least watch through most of the video and just hear me out on this. And another thing before I really get started, I am not condoning cheating. Like, I do not approve of getting aim hacks and wall hacks and all sorts of other stuff to gain a competitive advantage outside of just playing better. I am in no way saying that cheating is a good thing, but I am considering the possibility that it's happening for a reason, and I kind of want to dissect some possibilities as to why this could be so widespread. So let's start with the business of cheating, because game cheats have effectively become a really big market, and it is very heavily monetized nowadays. I remember seeing one article where some players spend as much as $10 a day for specific cheats for a game, and that was like several years ago. So I imagine it's possible that people are spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year just to cheat on a game, oftentimes a game that's free to play, which is quite bizarre to me that there's even the possibility for such a market to exist. Obviously, the question arises, why is this even happening? So considering the idea that making these cheats or being a company that builds out these cheats and sells them is big business, I think we first need to consider the more company aspect of things, where we consider the idea that these underground companies that build out cheats have to be profitable. And what do you do to keep a company profitable? You make it as competitive in the market as possible, and you target the highest value things possible to maximize your income. And the thing I've noticed is the games that a lot of people tend to complain that the cheating is really bad tend to be games that are very popular, because popular games are what's going to give the big cheating companies money. So take a game like the Finals, where it's the hot new competitive FPS game that pretty much every streamer jumped onto and is playing now. So it's getting a lot of activity on like Twitch and other social platforms, and it has a lot of active players right now. So it was only a matter of time before the cheating community basically started to work around the anti-cheat for that game and proceed to fill lobbies full of cheaters. So it's kind of obvious from a business standpoint that it's the popular games that tend to be targeted, but it's not always just PvP games that get targeted. because I've even seen some complaints of games like Phasmophobia. That's a PvE game where there are people that have cheats in that game, and that has somehow had a cheating problem, which doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface. Because why would somebody cheat on a PvE game that's designed to be casual? That is, of course, assuming Phasmophobia is supposed to be a casual game. But let's take the attention off of the people behind the cheats and focus on the people that actually use the cheats, those that make up the majority of the cheating community, so to speak. So why would you cheat at a game? Well, obviously it makes it easier to win. That's the most straightforward answer right there. But why would so many people, and progressively more and more people as time goes on, feel the need to have the game be easier to the point where they're willing to do unethical things for it, and upon that even spend lots of money to do so? And this is kind of where I'm getting into more the theory crafting part of this video, because there has to be some kind of driving force that is propelling people towards cheating more and more as time goes on. And I have several theories, and I really don't have any specific data to like prove any of this, but I do want to get the conversation started and just see what other people even think about this as well. Because from my perspective, I would suggest that cheating is becoming more prevalent because of another problem. Perhaps even multiple problems that have just shifted gaming culture to be progressively more cheat focused as time goes on. So let's take a look at gaming culture just a little bit, and I'm going to kind of target FPS games because that's typically where cheaters are most prevalent anyway, and FPS games tend to be the most popular as well. If you look at streamers, for example, most streamers, they'll play like 6 to 8 hours a day of whatever FPS game they're into. And even if they're not playing particularly optimal as far as improvement goes, when you brute force that many hours into a game, you eventually just get good at it, or at least have finely well-tuned fundamentals, even if they're technically not optimal. And streamers tend to have a following that's quite big surrounding these already quite popular games. And this is a pretty common culture now that we have, where there's the streaming culture, and it has its own things that make it what it is. But you also have these more global communities built around these games, such as your Discords and your Reddit communities. For the people that are more dedicated to the game than like your average person, and those who watch streamers usually just do it for a combination of the game plus the personality behind the streamer. And I know there's been a lot of commentary about how unhealthy some people's attachment to streamers can be. But it's safe to say that the streaming or influencer culture is quite prominent in gaming nowadays. And it is especially true for PvP games. But that's not the only thing that's like really commonplace right now. What's also commonplace and has been progressively getting more common as time goes on is that gaming has become more competitive over time. I think the finals is once again a really good example of this, and I don't even dare play that game, but I've seen streamers play it and YouTubers play it, as well as a friend I know play it, and even just the basic casual lobbies look incredibly sweaty, where everyone seems to be trying their absolute best to win at that game, just in what's effectively pubs. Looking at the Reddit community specifically, I've seen a lot of complaints about teammates not being up to the level of the original poster, and there's so many comments like, yeah, my teammates are garbage, they don't know how to team play, all this stuff. We're talking about a brand new game, and I know that the developers have tried their best to improve matchmaking, and yet there's still just a never-ending stream of complaints about how that game just does not have balanced teams. And it's really interesting to see this progressive cultural shift where people are becoming less and less accepting of suboptimal playstyles or behaviors in games, because a game like the finals is built around being competitive. So when people get the game and start trying to be good at it, they expect other people to do it as well. and be willing to put in the hours to improve at the game, actually team play, and all that good stuff. But a lot of people don't play games to be good at them. A lot of people play games to have fun. And there's starting to be a division in like culture where you're having this growing number of individuals that play games to win, where you are going to put in 4+ hours a day, maybe even more, and you are going to learn how to be good at the game. You're going to watch guides, you're going to get involved with the community, and you are going to try to be as good as you can be at the game. And to those people, somebody that's playing casually, diving in like Rambo and getting themselves wrecked every single time is going to be considered a problem to a more competitively focused player. And over time, the gap between a competitive player and a casual player has really started to grow. And even like casual players now, a lot of them are sometimes really good at games now and really are not casuals. They just think they are, but they're not. So for me, a casual player is somebody that just plays a game for fun. They're not necessarily in it to win. They just want to derp around and have a good time. If you're putting in hours to practice so that you can be good and you care about the team play of your teammates and you get upset at randoms for not being up to your level, you're not a casual player at that point because you're taking the wins seriously. When you're starting to expect things of your teammates to the point where you get upset when they perform below a certain metric, that is the sign of a competitive player, not a casual. And I have played games with casual players, and I'm gonna be honest, they're usually really bad. Like, they barely even know controls on some games, and games that they have played many hours in. They have like a few cute tricks that they can do, but that's like it. They don't have well thought out fundamentals. They usually don't even team play that well, but they may have hundreds of hours in a game with what seems like nothing to show for it. And it's that kind of player that the ever-increasing global competitive scene for each and every game is starting to frown upon people like that. And you can see just in Reddit communities how derogatory these more competitive sweats are to those that just can't play like them, or don't even seem to try to play like them. And that's because we have, as a global gaming community, so to speak, we have started to favor and promote a sweat culture that says you have to be good at games now in order to play them. And you may be thinking about this and wondering what this has to do with cheating. I'm getting there. But you might also be wondering, isn't that what matchmaking's for? And the answer to that is yes, but also no. There is a problem with matchmaking trying to actually match people fairly, and that has to do with the amount of time that players of different skill levels play. So if you take somebody that's at the level of your average streamer, they're putting a lot of hours in. So for like 6 to 8 hours in a day, they're going to be in queues, filling up the lobbies, oftentimes more than a casual player that may play 2 hours a week. Because if you have one more competitive, kind of sweaty player, let's just say they put in 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 20 hours that they get put in the matchmaker, which if you take a casual player that only plays 2 hours a week, that one sweaty player is taking up the same amount of queue time as 10 casual players. And here's where the math gets complicated. The competitive, sweaty people that are dedicated and put in more and more hours, that number has been growing steadily every year for games. And you can just see it in the finals, where every match that I've seen of people play, there's nobody that I've seen that I would really say looks like a casual player. They all look like they're trying hard to win. And I'm sure the casuals exist, but I don't think there's a high number of them compared to how things were 5-10 years ago, where I imagine back then maybe 80-90% of your player base was casual. Nowadays, it's more like maybe 40, perhaps even less percent is being filled in by those casuals that only play 2 hours a week. So what happens is the matchmaking can't compensate for the skill gap because you have to make absurdly long queue times to properly match people of equal skill, because there's less and less of those casual people that don't put a lot of hours in. And they're not going to want to wait 20 minutes to get into a match when they only play 2 hours a week. And sweaty people complain about having long queue times. So even from a developer perspective, you have to balance the fact that as communities get sweatier over time, casual players get less and less options to just play with casual players. And they usually just get thrown in with the more competitive, sweaty players to avoid queue times that are too long that would prevent them from actually, playing the game in the first place. And so you have this weird perfect storm, if you will, where the competitive scene is getting progressively more upset with people that don't play well. And matchmaking cannot just fix it most of the time because player bases are getting progressively better and sweatier over time. And I'm going to combine that with sort of the streaming culture that does sometimes have a problem with streamers being idolized. I'm sure you can think of some scenarios of that, where people see the streamer, they've got like 10,000 hours in whatever game, and they just do all this crazy stuff and have like the most epic Twitch clips out there. And, a casual player may look at that and say, well, I want to do that. That looks fun. And then they try to do it and fail miserably for one, but also end up throwing for their team usually because they're trying to be the carry and do this really cool epic play, but they don't have the skill or put in the hours to know even how to set one of those scenarios up. And that could be another layer on that's probably why sweaty people are upset with some casual players, because the casual player's trying to play like a streamer, but they can't, basically, because they don't put in the hours. So there's all these little puzzle pieces that I think lay the groundwork for our situation here. And I think it's with having this foundation here that now we need to take a look back at cheating. So I have a couple of different theories. They could be all true, none of them could be true, but I want to get into it anyway. I think that cheating is become so popular because of communities, particularly the global, more competitive communities. Because here's the thing, as games become increasingly more competitive, winning becomes increasingly more important. And as winning becomes more important, people are going to try more and more to do whatever it takes to win. You see this even in games like Apex, for example, where literal pros oftentimes get banned for cheating. It's kind of a regular occurrence at this point. But why would a pro risk cheating? Because to them, they think it gives them a better chance of winning. And ultimately, that is what cheats usually provide, is they make a game easier to win at. But it's not just pros that get caught cheating. Casuals get caught cheating. Basically, everyone across the spectrum of player skill can be a cheater. So what's going on here? Well, depending on the type of person, they may have a different reason for it. But what I'm going to get into is my theories for why people cheat. And this is really where all of that other stuff kind of ties together. Competitive communities are not nice, and they have become progressively less nice as time goes on. Even certain PvE games are kind of sweaty. And I've looked into Phasmophobia, for example. There is an extensive speedrunning meta for that game. And I've seen Discord discussions full of just how to optimize this, or oh, you're struggling with the highest difficulty. Well, here's how you actually do it. And there's this great guide you can watch for how to play at the highest difficulty in Phasmophobia, so on and so forth. The community's gotten really good at dissecting that game. And I think that's caused a problem. And you can see that with the developer's response to players that exploit the game, which, to be fair, exploiting is not cheating. You're just abusing game mechanics, which speedrunners do that all the time. It's a thing. But the Phasmophobia development team doesn't like the game being exploited, and they usually try to patch out exploits as quickly as they can, which just causes the community to look for new exploits. And one of the things they apparently got upset with is how quickly people leveled their characters. And you can see this with the progression 2.0 that they added, where to unlock every piece of gear, which by the way, a lot of that gear isn't even useful at the highest difficulty level of that game, which that game's progression makes absolutely no sense. But the player level progression to unlock every item, every piece of gear, I believe someone calculated it that if you're just playing like normal matches and you're not like this crazy speedrunner, it's going to take you like 100 hours. Actually, it's a number over 100 hours. That's an absurd amount of time, especially when you consider a casual player, which that game should have a lot of, because it's a PvE game. And guess what happened when they launched Progression 2.0? Cheaters started showing up with experience hacks. Crazy. And I think we need to pay attention to this here. That was not a problem before Progression 2.0, but it was a problem after Progression 2.0. Why? Because the progression to unlock things suddenly became difficult. And it was balanced for the sweats of the game, not for the casuals. So the casual player that only plays 2 hours a week, it's going to take them a whole year to unlock everything. That's a long time. And that's something that a lot of people don't want to have to deal with. They don't want games to take forever to unlock everything. That just seems arbitrary and unfair. But it's tuned for the people that are willing to put in 100 hours a week to unlock everything. And then there's a prestige system on top of that, which makes it even more absurd. And all you get's like a fancy player badge. It's not even that special. But there are people that will grind that game for hours using the community recommended optimized settings to, as efficiently as possible, get unlocks. This is a casual game. Why do we even have that level of optimization almost forced upon people just so they can unlock stuff? But that is just one example of how unreasonably competitive games have gotten these days, where even casual games are tuned for competitive players. And that makes absolutely no sense. And of course, that would cause cheaters to show up to have everything unlocked already, because they tuned the difficulty too high for a casual player to be able to handle. And I've seen it where a lot of people in that community ask for help to get unlocks. So in that scenario, I think this is a good showcase and kind of proves my idea here. It's kind of the community's fault in a way, but it's also the developers' reaction's fault that eventually led to an increase in cheating. And the cheat is literally just to have all the progression unlocked. Like, it's not even that offensive. Yet the developers and the community take that very seriously and don't like that it's happening. But for somebody that doesn't put in the time, where it's going to take them a year, 2 years, if they're not good at the game, to unlock everything, is that actually a fair tuning, if you think about it? So let's take a look at another game like the finals, for example. Now, why would people cheat in that game? Well, there's money tournaments for one, so you can get money. But I think it has to do with a very similar issue, where a lot of games nowadays are not really tuned for casual people that just want to get on and have a good time. And you combine that with the sweaty communities that don't like people that play suboptimally, seem to have like this vendetta against them almost. You reach a point where what is a casual player supposed to do? Apparently, from what developers or the community seem to think, if you can't handle the game, just don't play it. Well, that's not what these players have started doing. They've just decided that I'm going to get my free time back by using cheats to bring me up to the level of players that do put in 4+ hours a day. And that's not fair to either player. It's not fair to the person that does put in the time to be that good, but it's also not fair to the casual that they feel pressured to that point where cheating becomes the only option. And you can see this in piracy as well, where as the settings get more locked down on streaming services and stuff, piracy tends to go up, because as the experience becomes worse to do it the right way, the illegal way becomes more enticing. And we are seeing a similar trend with cheating, I think, where some people are just tired of the sweat and they know they can't put in the hours or have the mental frameworks to get good enough to compete. And the matchmaking's not able to just fix it because they don't put in the hours to fill the queue long enough to get matched with people like them. So what are they going to do? Of course they're going to cheat, because it's reaching the point where some people have no choice. If they want to actually enjoy the game and not get cussed out by every Redditor that they're queued with, they have to cheat. And I think that's what we're seeing, is more and more people are being pushed to that limit where they feel like cheating is the only way to enjoy the game again. That's my theory. Now, I don't think every cheater is like that. As I mentioned, pros. There's some people that cheat because they just like to troll. And that's not the people I'm talking about. I'm mostly focused on that casual player that the only way to get their game back is to cheat at it. And that especially gets increasingly worse as new generations of gamers start to show up, where they're competing with people that have been playing for 20 plus years. They don't stand a chance. And the global communities are very unforgiving of those kind of people that just don't know how to play, how to be good. And the matchmaking can't fix that and just put them with only people like them. So they have to either use bots or match them with the players that don't like those people. So I think we have, as a global community, as well as just the gaming industry has contributed to this. Streamers contributed. We all kind of have a piece in this perfect storm that we have created that has progressively opened the door for cheating to not only become more prominent, but to become an increasingly more viable option to more people. Now, as to how to fix that, that's a difficult one. And I think that's where the comment section could be quite helpful, where I wanted to bring this to light because I think we need to just be a bit more careful about just saying cheater bad and actually think about why these people are cheating. Obviously, not support the cheating in any form or fashion, but maybe figure out why people are and why it's getting worse and why people are willing to spend thousands of dollars to cheat on a free-to-play game. It's something we need to consider, not just better anti-cheat, better MM. Some games can't fix their game with MM. Some games obviously don't have good enough anti-cheat. Perhaps that could be improved over the years. But if it is, you're going to find an increasing amount of people that just don't play games that have a good anti-cheat. As the cheating player base grows, developers may be incentivized to not have good anti-cheat so that their games could actually be more profitable, because cheaters have shown that they're willing to play the game and spend money on it, which that presents a really interesting situation. What if it gets to where cheating is such a big thing that your game will go in the hole if you do not allow some percentage of cheaters in? That's why I don't think it's as simple as ban cheaters, better anti-cheat. I think it's a lot more complicated than that, and we need to at least consider the possibility that if we don't try to fix, say, a more root issue, that developers will be left with no choice but to allow cheaters just so that their game can be profitable and stay popular. Because if cheating is already a multi-billion-dollar industry, just imagine what it will be in the next 5 to 10 years. I know this is more of a podcasty sort of thing, but I think this is an important discussion, and it's one that needs to be considered by the community as a whole, the gaming community as a whole. It doesn't matter to the genre. And I think it's something that needs to be discussed out more by more people. I think people could do more thorough investigations than me, as well as have even more nuance they could bring to the table. But I am just trying to get the conversation started. That's my goal. And I hope that was at least mildly informative to you and got you to think about what maybe we can do as a community to prevent this from getting worse going forward. I don't have solutions yet. Maybe I'll make a future video discussing potential solutions. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I will see y'all next time.